All right, so now we're going to continue with Genesis 2, the second creator. And we're going to get into the creation of Eve and what I believe that is. So in the Tree of Life version, it says, the Adonai Elohim, it is not good for the man to be alone. Let me make a well-matched helper for him. Adonai Elohim had formed from the ground every animal of the field and every flying creature of the sky. So he brought them to the man to see what he would call them. Whatever the man called them, each living creature, that was its name. So the man gave names to all the livestock and to all the flying creatures and to the animals of the field. But for man, he did not find a well-matched helper for him. And let's see what the Lexham Bible has. Let's see. Go back 1 second. And this says, and then Yahweh God, it is not good that man is alone, and I will make for him a helper as his counterpart. And out of the ground Yahweh God formed every beast, etc., etc., etc. But for the man there was not found a helper as his counterpart. All right, so I'm starting there because I'm just trying to imagine who on earth would ever think that an animal would be a great helper or counterpart for a man or a human being. I think that's really strange because remember, in Genesis 1, the story of the first creator, he made Adam and Eve, or the first man and the first woman, at the same time. He made them as counterparts already. But for some reason in the second creator story, the second creator thought that animals would be a great counterpart for a man. That just seems awfully odd, especially when you keep in mind that later on, the second creator God, or the Adonai Elohim, wanted Adam and Eve to multiply. And I'm like, well, were you thinking that Adam was going to multiply with an animal? You know what I mean? You get where I'm going with this? Like, is this why they say dog is a man's best friend? It's just weird. It's just weird that, again, this God creator, the way that many of you think of it or him as this super intelligence that knows all and created all, somehow thought that animals would be a good counterpart for a man. Now again, maybe that distinction between human, man, and mankind is for a reason. Because if we think about what a counterpart is, that would be an equal. And why would you ever think that an animal would be an equal to a human being or a human, unless, again, we are under a very deep and somewhat concerning misconception about what man is. I just think it's odd. So before I got into this part that I'm really about to dig into, we just step back and, again, just think about the thought patterns that this second creator has. He can't manifest through words. He has to use mechanical means. He's giving out orders and commands, where the first God didn't do that. He just said, go have fun. The second God created Adam somewhere else and then moved him to Eden to cultivate and work the land. So he created you and moved you to work for him. The first God just said, go have fun. And now here we are. The second God thought that an animal would be a great counterpart for a man. That's just odd to me. Okay. And the Lord God, this is from the King James Version, and the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man, he made a woman and brought her unto Adam. Okay. Let's take a look at that from my Tree of Life Version Bible that I like to reference most. And it says, the Adonai Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. The Adonai Elohim built the rib which he had taken from the man into a woman. Then he brought her to man. Okay? Let me just give you these other two really quickly. From the Lexham version of the Bible, it said, "And Yahweh God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man. While he slept, he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh where it had been. And Yahweh God fashioned the rib which he had taken from man into a woman and brought her to the man." Okay. And then from the Septuagint Bible, "And God brought a trance upon Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and filled up the flesh instead thereof." So to me, when I read this with my first eye, I immediately understood what this was describing. Take a look.
We are giving some medicine to sleep, okay? You will sleep. கொஞ்சம் கையில வலி இருக்கும். I am not touching because your surgery is done there, no? So I'm waiting for some time. Because surgery is done there before, so I don't want to really ventilate him like that.
Around as if this were the posterior portion of a posterior lateral thoracotomy. And that's generally the incision that I use. You can see probably the edge of the trapezius coming into view here. And then here would be the edge of the latissimus, and right about in here would be our auscultatory triangle. When I'm raising these flaps, I try and just stay just above the muscle fascia. Generally, the first muscle edge that you cut is the inferior border of the trapezius, which is shown here. Coming this way now is serratus, really, and then that opens up the whole chest wall, and you have access literally from 1 to 12, and you can put a plate from posterior to your most posterior border, all the way around to pretty much anteriorly as far as you can see. The way I close is use absorbable sutures, interrupted absorbable sutures on the muscle layers, and then close the subcutaneous space with, again, absorbable suture, and then do a subcuticular closure, simply so they don't have to lay on staples.
All right, so again, when they say hidden in plain sight, I mean, it's so much shit in the world that really is hidden in plain sight, but you don't realize it until you finally see it. This hit me it didn't even take a second. This is clearly describing surgery. Again, this isn't something mystical. It's surgery. The Adonai Elohim caused a deep sleep. That's called anesthesia, guys. That's not mystical. There's no allegoric element. He was put under anesthesia. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. Yes, that's called an incision. An incision was made into the rib or the side of Adam. This Elohim God took a piece and then stitched it back up. This is very simple and clear cut. But now, here's where I want to dive deep. Because as I'm thinking, like, okay, why did he take a rib? Out of all the bones in the body that you could take, why would you take a rib? Not a tibula, a fibula, not a piece of bone from your finger, just anywhere. Why the rib? Then I said, okay, I got to put back on my engineer scientist hat. And I went back to biology class. And I know a lot of you guys, not a lot, let me not say that, but I know there's this issue about school and the value of school and the value of education. And I'm going to actually have an episode dedicated to the value of education and the different types of education and the different types of way you can apply them throughout life. But if you have kids or if you are a young person, please don't think that when you learn algebra or biology, just anything, that it's a waste and that you'll never use this. Well, it really depends on what you want to do in the world. I know all my friends who went to med school, they definitely need biology. You know what I mean? I know a couple of my buddies who are engineers, they definitely need to know chemistry and mathematics for what they're doing. You get what I'm saying? So again, if you're a source player, pay attention to the all that is. The all that is at some point has, again, brought you to or through some experience to give you a bit of information, a breadcrumb. You know what I mean? No, I don't need to know biology or chemistry on a level where I can work in a pharmacy or develop drugs. But again, I have a few doctor friends where they can't be doctors if they didn't know biology and chemistry. So maybe instead of saying that education is a waste or you don't need education, maybe you need to step up your goals in life. Maybe you strive towards things that require an education. And again, this isn't about that because I have an entire episode dedicated. But I just know this attitude of fuck school, fuck school, fuck school is really concerning to me, especially when so many people, y'all are broke and y'all don't even know which way to climb out, but you want to say fuck school. Maybe it's something there that you could learn and take away. Anywho, I'm just saying all that to say, thank you, Baltimore Polytechnic Institute, for teaching me biology and chemistry. Because this next part I may not have picked up on so fast. So again, why the rib? Boom, stem cells. Take a look.
With the locking mechanism, you see, bone marrow has started coming out, although slowly. You see, the bone marrow is coming out, it is being sucked. We have to change its angle so that you get bone marrow from all the directions. About 15 ml is already collected. This is a vacuum lock syringe which is made by some patented technique from BMAC, and we need not to pull it all the time, and it collects.
All right, stem cells. Stem cells and bone marrow. The rib has I guess you could call it the highest concentration of bone marrow in your body. This is why they took the rib. And what's in bone marrow? Stem cells. But I don't want to jump too far ahead. Let me actually give you a definition of what bone marrow is, what stem cells are, and then how they're used. And that'll bring a lot of this together. So bone marrow is a spongy substance found in the center of the bones. It manufactures bone marrow stem cells and other substances which in turn produce blood cells. Each type of blood cell made by the bone marrow has an important job. Red blood cells carry oxygen to the tissues of the body. All right, so again, the bone marrow is where the stem cells are manufactured. Now, what's the stem cell? Stem cells are special human cells that are able to develop into many different cell types. This can range from muscle cells to brain cells. They are the body's raw materials. Cells from which all other cells with specialized functions are generated. Under the right condition in the body or a laboratory, stem cells divide to form more cells called daughter cells. No other cell in the body has the natural ability to generate new cell types. So boom, when I present the theory that Genesis is not the creation story of the first human beings, but yet rather the creation story of mankind, a kind of man or a clone, now we can bring it together, right? Or at least I hope we can. God, the Adonai Elohim, took the rib. He put Adam under a deep sleep anesthesia. He took a rib, he made an incision, performed a type of surgery, stitched it back up. that piece of rib is important because it has the highest concentration of stem cells. Stem cells are the cells that we know are regenerative. So if you think about, what was that guy's name that played Superman, and he was paralyzed and he wanted what? A stem cell transplant. People with severe injuries try to get stem cell transplants so they can regain. These stem cells are the building blocks that you need to copy, well, anything, a mammal. Actually, don't take my word for it. Let's take a look.
Her name is Dolly. 7 months old, she may not be the monster imagined in a science fiction fantasy, yet the cuddly Finn Dorset lamb may represent a major landmark in the history of genetic engineering. On an ordinary farm in Scotland, scientists say a clone was created from a single cell taken from the udder of a sheep. The embryo was then implanted in a surrogate, making an exact genetic copy of its so-called mother. Scientists hail it as a triumph for research in aging, medicine, and genetics.
This googly-eyed 5-month-old pug is named Momotan. And for now, she's living amongst dozens of other newborn puppies. But these aren't your standard run-of-the-mill puppies. They don't know it, but Momotan and each of her puppy companions are clones. First, for you to even consider getting your dog cloned, you need $100,000. Also, the dog you want to clone has to be either alive or dead for fewer than 5 days. If you want to clone your dead dog, you have to first wrap its entire body with wet towels and then keep it cool by placing it in the refrigerator. You can't freeze it. All of this may seem a bit odd, but Suam needs live skin cells in order to clone your dog. This process prevents the skin on your dead dog from drying out or freezing, and it gives Suam the highest chance of finding preserved skin cells. Next, you need to take your dog to the vet and get a biopsy sample. Using a tool called a biopsy punch, your veterinarian will cut out an 8mm wide sample of flesh from the abdominal area of the dog. If your dog is alive, just one sample is enough. But if your dog is dead, you'll need to provide Suam with as many samples as possible to increase the chances of finding live skin cells. You then pack the sample with ice packs in a styrofoam box to keep it chilled and expedite it to Suam, which you can do so using normal shipping services like FedEx. And once the sample has passed through Korean customs, which can take an additional 2 to 3 days, Suam can finally get to work on cloning your dog. First, the sample is sterilized and cut into smaller pieces. Then it's treated with a reagent and chemically dissociated, meaning the cells are separated from the tissue. The sample is then placed in a centrifuge, which allows the scientists to collect the cells and transfer them into a growth medium. 1 to 2 weeks later, Suam has the cells necessary for the cloning process.
Meet Zhong Zhong and Hua Hua. These twin long-tailed crab-eating macaques are being hailed as a scientific breakthrough. This laboratory in China has succeeded where other researchers have failed. Scientists at the Institute of Neuroscience in Shanghai created the first cloned monkeys using a technique called somatic cell nuclear transfer. The cloning process began with a monkey egg and a monkey fetus cell. The genetically modified process in the laboratory then develops into an embryo, which was then implanted in a monkey. Eventually, the babies were born.
According to a new study published in the National Science Review, researchers from China have inserted human brain genes into monkeys. The scientists did this by injecting viruses with the human gene MCPH1, a gene related to brain development, into the embryos of 11 monkeys. They then let the monkeys grow before further testing. Out of the 11 that were injected, only 5 survived. According to MIT Technology Review, the researchers found that the modified monkeys did better on memory tests involving colors and block pictures. They also noted that the modified monkeys' brains took longer to develop, similar to human babies.
All right, So when we talk about cloning, maybe we don't have any examples of human cloning, at least not to the public. But we do know they've cloned sheep and they've cloned monkeys. And in addition to cloning monkeys, we also know that they've been inserting human brain cells into the cloned monkeys. Now, I'm not suggesting that human beings evolved from monkeys. I don't believe in evolution. However, listen, the fact that they can do that and are doing that should tell you a lot. Because remember, what they release to the public means they've been doing it for years and decades.